The next speaker is the person who I think has been persecuted more than anybody else in the state of Washington. The Attorney General's dedicated his life. Well, he ignores the landfill and toxic waste dump that's occurring on the other side of the Capitol Lake right now. He ignores violence in our streets. He ignores violence at the hotels down here when they seize him and Antifa attacks people. He ignores all that, but by God, he has gone after Tim Eyman more than anybody else I've ever seen, and more than anybody else in the history of the state of Washington, and yet for the great crime of reducing how much taxes we pay. So for that, Tim, I want you to come on up with that setup and have you share your words of wisdom and commit an act of free speech today.
Hey, thanks very much. Let's hear it for Glenn Morgan. One of the things that he did, which I can't stand when he does this stuff, is that he says, I'm not important, I'm no big deal. Glenn Morgan is a huge deal, and we're so lucky to have him on our team. I had the great honor of doing a traveling road tour about a year or two ago, and we called it the, help me out, Full Contact Activism Tour that we did together. And we tag teamed it. We were speaking to various groups, and our goal was to try and inspire more people to get active and get politically active. And after about 8 stops and various speeches, we both realized that we were probably squelching an enormous amount of activism because we started talking about the kind of stuff that's happened to us. And we found it richly ironic that as we're telling stories about how we're being destroyed, and he has his own lawsuit that I'm going to talk about a little bit. But as all this stuff is happening, we're looking at all these people, and they kind of look white as a sheet and go, yeah, sounds like a great deal. Maybe we should do that too. Didn't inspire a lot with that. But it really was an amazing experience, and I had a chance to get to know Glenn. And the thing that I really admire about him is that he's a smart activist. He's not just a reckless activist. He thinks this stuff through. He understood the ramifications of what he was doing. No matter how provocative his posts were about how we were going to commit acts of free speech, he did his homework. He contacted attorneys. He had things lined up in the event that things went bad, but he didn't hide it from anybody. He shared it with the State Patrol. He shared it with the Inslee administration, with the Ferguson Attorney General's office, with all of them saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, and I provoke you, and I invite you to arrest me if you think that I'm out of line. And I thought that smart approach is something that our side needs to learn more of, is that he knew he was on solid ground, but I know a lot of us feel like we're on solid ground, but he had the guts and the smarts to do it the right way, and he got them to back down before we even did it. So let's hear it for Glenn. I really admire Glenn. I just think we are so lucky to have him on our side. I don't know if many of you pick up his subtle humor that he uses quite often. One of my favorite stories that he talked about is that when he was in college, he would see that the other side was having a protest, where they were starving themselves, where they were on a fast, and he would have a barbecue right next to them at the same event in order to be able to illustrate the absurdity of the other side. And so there's something about Glenn, as with me, I think we're both acquired tastes, but I think that the humor is critical because we're in a pretty dark time right now. And if we can't use humor and a lot of dark humor, we're not going to make it through this thing. So let's hear it one more time for Glenn. Well, he did bring up my thing with the Attorney General, and I rarely have a chance to talk about it extensively because I'm usually doing something but on some kind of project. But, we're talking about First Amendment, so that's what I'm going to talk about today. This Wednesday in Thurston County Superior Court, a judge is going to make a ruling. 8.5 years of my life has been devoted to this nonstop investigation, litigation, persecution against me, my family, my supporters, all the people that have helped me over the years, and it's reaching fruition where there will actually be a decision. And regardless of what that decision is, it's already a victory. Because I don't believe that the Attorney General ever thought that I would make it that long. That at some point, you would give up on me, or I would give up and break and basically move to Idaho and sell real estate for a living or do something and walk away from it.
Never!
And I think it's a combination of masochism, stupidity, stubbornness, and just a belief that if they take me out, that who's going to be next? And so 8.5 years. It's hard for me to believe that we're reaching the point where there will actually be a decision. And on Wednesday, between 1:30 and 3:30 in Thurston County Superior Court, the judge is going to issue his decision. During the trial, the state said they wanted to be reasonable as far as the penalties are concerned. So the penalty they want is a $7.6 million fine. So reasonable. So reasonable. Glad they held back. And a lifetime ban on all future political activity.
Absolutely not.
So I'm glad they're being so reasonable and not pushing the envelope too far. And so Wednesday of next week, we find out the decision on it. And like I said, I feel it's already a victory that because of thousands of people throughout the state that have donated to my legal defense fund, I was able to survive this. But in the process, they literally took everything I have. It looks like we're going to lose our house because it's the only way to be able to pay the lawyers. But I am just so grateful that so many people have helped me reach this stage where I'm actually able to get some kind of decision. And it's an amazing thing, and I just want to say thank you, everybody, for that.
What are the charges? What are the actual charges?
The thing about this that is always difficult is that the state, throughout their investigation, realized that the process itself is the punishment. That they can mirror your hard drive. They can depose you. I've been deposed like 5 times. They deposed my wife. They deposed supporters that had helped me over the years. And they would subpoena people and ask them for the last 10 years of emails between Tim Eyman and you. And the message was pretty clear that if you help me, you will pay a price for it. So stop helping him. And what it did was I found that more and more people were willing to help me because they saw this abuse of power and they saw the injustice of it. And they say to themselves, no matter what he did, is this an appropriate penalty? To lose everything you've ever had, take away a guy's house, basically destroy his life because, as Glenn said, my original sin was being a conservative in the state of Washington and being effective at it. So the charges, I love the charges, allegations. For the last 8 years, for example, I asked people to help me. And help me survive this thing. The Attorney General, during the investigation, found out that people were helping me. And they suddenly said that if Tim Eyman receives a check made payable to Tim Eyman or Tim Eyman Legal Defense Fund, that is a campaign contribution that needed to be reported. Now, if you understand campaign finance law, you have to report all your contributions to a political campaign. And I'm not a political campaign. I am a person. I'm a human being. And so the state, in order to be able to bolster their argument that these are campaign contributions, came up with the novel theory that I am no longer a person. I am now a political action committee. Tim Eyman, personally, is a political action committee. It's the first time in human history a person would be considered a political action committee, but what does that mean? Normal human beings have no idea what that means. What's wrong with that? A political action committee has to report every dollar you receive and every dollar you spend, regardless of what it's for. So if I go to the grocery store, they think that that has to be on a campaign report. Money I spend on toilet paper, money I spend on car insurance. Anything that I spend my money on has to go on a campaign report on a monthly basis. But it went further than that. if you're a political action committee, you can't use your campaign funds for personal use. So I would be prohibited from using my own money to spend money for me and my family to take care of them. How do you live like that? The point is you can't. It's simply impossible. So the very concept of how can Tim Eyman continue to exercise free speech, be active politically, and yet literally can't spend his own money to take care of himself is an absurd position. But he nonetheless, the AG said, Mr. Eyman in the last 6 years has collected $766,000 in quote-unquote campaign contributions that he never reported. And this particular judge bought that line of crap and ended up ruling that way about 6 months ago. And so the headlines you read about Tim Eyman taking campaign money for personal use, you have to ask yourself the question, is a check made payable to Tim Eyman or a Tim Eyman Legal Defense Fund, is that a campaign contribution? Was it okay for him to use his own money to take care of himself? You're going to have to forgive me. It's hard not for me to talk about this because it's been such a central aspect of my life for 8.5 years, and to know that I'm on the verge of maybe this is the last act of free speech that I'm allowed to give, I'm going to take this moment and talk about it a little bit, because it's 8.5 years of anger and frustration that when you're represented by an attorney, you can't talk about it. The one aspect that also happened throughout this is that about 2 years ago, I had to file for bankruptcy because the amount of costs associated with this thing got so bad that I ended up going, I just can't keep up with this. That didn't stop the litigation. It kept going. And so they eventually, the Attorney General managed to bully my lawyer off the case. And I went to the judge and I said, Judge, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not an attorney. I can't possibly defend myself. I have no idea what I'm doing. I want to default. I want to give up. Let's just simply decide now how much the penalty is going to be, because I just can't defend myself. And this judge said, no, I'm not going to let you give up. You have to keep going. So I was forced to represent myself for about 9 months. Now, I went to Washington State University. Go Cougs! Great business education, but it doesn't teach you a lot about being in a courtroom. And so I ended up losing motion after motion after motion throughout this entire ordeal. During that 8 months, they just buried me, and I was literally not able to keep up with it. But eventually, former Justice Richard Sanders agreed to take my case. And he's been defending me for close to a year now, and he had to spend 8 months just getting through all the discovery requests that the state had hit me with. It literally cost $400,000 or $500,000 for him to do that, and I still owe him hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's what the only way I'm going to be able to pay him is for them to take my home as a result of it. And so I'm just enormously grateful for Richard that he didn't just walk away from the fight. He stuck with it and was willing to get me to the point where I actually get a decision on Wednesday. I went much longer than I expected to go today. I'm sorry about that, but I just want you to know that I am just so grateful to all of you for being with me throughout this entire fight. It's been 8.5 years. Let me let you know a little secret. You know, regardless of what the decision is, the Attorney General will find it inadequate and will end up appealing it. So this will go on for years longer. And so the thing that I'm most proud of throughout this entire 8 years during this thing as it's been going on is I think Ferguson wanted me at some point to just stop trying, just to give up. And the thing that made me so happy and proud is that I basically took the advice of Glenn Morgan and say, you need to become a super activist. You need to show that this has only inspired you to do more. So I've been doing initiatives, and you've been passing them. $30 tabs, anybody?
3 times.
Admittedly, a very confusing initiative.
3 times.
Very, very confusing. 9 justices on the Supreme Court said it was too confusing for voters. I ran for governor. probably wouldn't have run for governor if not for that lawsuit. That lawsuit inspired me to work even harder because I knew that Ferguson would want me to stop, to just slow down. And I wanted to kick it into overdrive and say, all you're doing is inspiring me to do even more. And so they're sending out attack dogs. God, the other side has learned a lot from history on what those dogs can do at free speech rallies. So anyway, I'll close with that. One more time, we would not be here today if not for Glenn Morgan. Let's hear it one more time for Glenn. We'll turn it over to everybody else again Wednesday. I just want to thank you all for your prayers, for all your support over the years. I know I would never have made it without any of you. I'm just incredibly grateful to all of you for helping me over the years, and I'm going to keep, as long as there's air in my lungs and energy in my muscles, I'm going to continue to be an activist in the state of Washington. So thank you very much.
Can we go to the hearing? Hey, can we
Thank
go
you.
to the hearing?
You can go to the hearing. It's going to be at Thurston County Courthouse where the Constitution goes to die.